Welcome to today's episode on the Complete Illustrated Liaozhai series, a collection of hand-painted illustrations depicting the scenes and stories from Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, Liaozhai Zhiyi. The full set consists of approximately 90 volumes scattered across various collections worldwide. This particular video focuses on 17 volumes archived at the Austrian National Library and one at the Martin Bodmer Foundation Library in Geneva, Switzerland. These illustrated volumes date roughly back to the Guangxu period of the Qing Dynasty. Today, we will explore the content of Volume 33. The stories in this volume include Qu Dayang, Li Boyan, Huang Jiulang, The Lady of Jinling, and The Chain. However, since we've already covered the entire story of Qu Dayang in the previous episode on Volume 32, we won't repeat that here. If you're interested in Qu Dayang, you can find it in the Legends, Characters, and Urban Tales playlist under Ancient Eastern Illustrations. For today's focus, we'll delve into the tales of Li Boyan, Huang Jiulang, The Lady of Jinling, and The Chain. Let's get started. The first story we'll cover today is Li Boyan. Li Boyan was a man from Yishui, known for his upright character and bold, chivalrous spirit. One day, he suddenly fell deathly ill. When his family brought him medicine, he refused, saying, "This sickness can't be cured by medicine. The underworld is short one judge, and they want me to fill in for a while. After I die, don't bury me right away. Wait for me to return." Sure enough, that very day, he died. A servant came to guide Li Boyan to a palace, where he was dressed in official robes and crowned with a judge's hat. Rows of officers stood at attention, treating him with utmost respect. On his desk lay piles of case files, stacked messily. Picking up one, Li Boyan read about a certain man from Jiangnan province. This man, according to the investigation, had violated 82 innocent women throughout his life. The evidence was solid, and according to the laws of the underworld, the punishment was brutal: the copper pillar. In the hall stood a towering copper pillar, 8 or 9 feet tall, thick as an arm's embrace. Inside the hollow pillar, blazing red-hot coals were stuffed, heating the metal until it glowed. A group of demons, armed with spiked whips, drove the condemned man toward the pillar, forcing him to climb it. As he climbed, the pillar scorched his skin, and when he reached the top, there was a loud bang like an explosion. Smoke billowed up, and he fell to the ground, twitching and convulsing in agony. The demons whipped him again, forcing him to climb the pillar twice more. Each time he reached the top, there was that same explosive sound, and he'd plummet to the ground. After the third time, the man's body disintegrated into a smoky mist, and he disappeared, never to be seen again. Next, another case caught Li Boyan's attention. This one involved a man from his own town, Wang, a distant relative. The case was brought by the father of Wang's maid, who accused him of unlawfully taking his daughter. Wang had indeed bought the maid for a suspiciously low price, knowing full well it wasn't legal. Soon after the purchase, Wang fell gravely ill and died. A few days later, Wang's friend Zhou encountered him as a ghost while walking down the road. Realizing what he'd seen, Zhou fled home in terror, but Wang's ghost followed him. Wang demanded that Zhou testify for him in the underworld court, saying, "You know I bought the maid fairly, and now I've been wrongfully accused of kidnapping. I need your word as a witness." Zhao refused in fear, but Wang ominously warned, "You may not have a choice." Sure enough, Zhou died soon after, and both men stood before the king of the underworld. When Li Boyan saw that Wang was the accused, he felt a twinge of sympathy. Just as he was about to act on it, a fire suddenly ignited in the hall, flames licking up the wooden beams. Terrified, Li Boyan stepped back. A small official rushed over and whispered urgently, "In the underworld, any hint of personal bias will ignite fire. Purge your mind of favoritism, and the flames will die." Li Boyan cleared his thoughts, and the fire instantly went out. The trial proceeded. Wang and the maid's father each made their case, throwing accusations back and forth. Zhou testified truthfully, revealing that Wang had knowingly made an illegal purchase. Wang was sentenced to be flogged with rods. After the punishment, Li Boyan sent Zhou and Wang back to the living world. Both men revived after being dead for 3 days. After wrapping up his duties, Li Boyan was heading back home when he encountered hundreds of ghosts along the roadside, headless, limbless, groaning in agony. They begged for his help. These were the spirits of people who had died far from home and were desperate to return but feared the checkpoints that might stop them. They pleaded for travel permits from Li Boyan. "I no longer have any power here," Li Boyan replied. "My temporary position has ended." The ghosts wouldn't relent, however, and urged him to pass a message to Hu Sheng, a living man who was about to hold a ritual to free souls. Li Boyan agreed to help. When Li Boyan woke up, he immediately sought out Hu Sheng, who, astonished, asked, "How did you know I planned to hold a ritual? I hadn't told a soul, just discussed it with my wife." Li Boyan explained everything, leaving Hu both awed and unsettled by how quickly word had spread to the underworld. Li Boyan later visited Wang, who was still weak and bedridden after his punishment. Wang greeted him with deep gratitude for his leniency. But Li Boyan replied, "The laws of the underworld leave no room for mercy. Are you recovering?" Wang nodded, though his body was still covered in festering sores from the flogging. It took him over 20 days to heal fully, and even then his back was permanently scarred, just as if he'd been truly whipped in the underworld. Pu Songling, the author of this tale, adds a chilling note. "The punishments of the underworld are far harsher than those of the living world. No sympathy or favor can intervene, and those who endure these punishments hold no complaints. Who can claim the underworld is unjust? I only wish we had that fire to burn away the corruption of the living world's courts." This story is a vivid reminder of the underworld's brutal justice, where even a fleeting thought of bias can ignite flames, and no wrongdoer, no matter how connected, can escape their fate. In today's episode, we want to share a rather unique story from the Qing Dynasty, which might surprise many of you due to its unexpected themes. Before we begin, I want to make a quick note. Our channel, Eastern Brush, Western Soul, led by myself and my collaborator Little Fish, is passionate about preserving and translating ancient texts. This story is no exception. However, it contains themes that some might find a bit ahead of its time, almost uncharacteristically modern and potentially sensitive. We have decided to translate it to present the story as authentically as possible without making any alterations. We ask that our viewers approach it with an open mind and understand that our intention is not to offend anyone, but simply to share a fascinating narrative from the past. The story begins with He Shishen, courtesy name Zixiao, a scholar whose study was situated near a vast open field in the east of Tiaoxi. One evening, as he strolled outside his house, he saw a woman riding a donkey, accompanied by a young boy walking behind her. The woman appeared to be around 50 with a refined air about her. But it was the boy that caught He Zixiao's eye. He was around 15 or 16 years old, remarkably beautiful, almost more so than a girl. Zixiao, who had a well-known preference for young men, was immediately captivated. He stood there staring after the boy long after he had passed by, completely mesmerized. The next morning, He Zixiao eagerly went outside again, hoping to see the boy. He waited all day, and just as dusk settled, the boy walked by once more. Overcome with excitement, he rushed to greet him, asking where he had come from. The boy replied simply, "From my grandfather's house." He Zixiao, not wanting to lose the opportunity, invited the boy to rest inside his house. The boy hesitated, saying he didn't have time, but Zixiao insisted, almost dragging him inside. The boy, feeling uncomfortable, sat for only a short time before quickly leaving, though Zixiao made him promise to return. From that moment on, He Zixiao was consumed by thoughts of the boy. He wandered back and forth near his gate every day, unable to think of anything else. Finally, one evening as the sun was half set, the boy appeared again. Zixiao rushed to welcome him into his study and set out wine for them to drink together. During their conversation, the boy revealed his name, Huang Jiulang, or simply Ninth Brother, as he was too young to have a formal name yet. He explained that he often traveled between his mother's house and his grandfather's because his mother was frequently ill. As the evening progressed, He Zixiao grew bolder. He tried to convince Jiulang to stay the night, but the boy, though gentle in demeanor, resisted at first. Eventually, He Zixiao persuaded him, and the boy lay down fully clothed, clearly uncomfortable. As the night wore on, Zixiao made advances, which Jiulang rebuffed, calling him out for acting in a way unbefitting a scholar. Despite the boy's protests, Zixiao continued to press him, and Jiulang reluctantly spent the night. Over the following days, Zixiao's obsession with Jiulang only deepened. When Jiulang finally returned after a few days, Zixiao apologized profusely for his previous behavior. Jiulang, soft-hearted, forgave him but warned that they couldn't continue in such a way. However, as time went on, Zixiao's persistence wore him down. He demanded more than just companionship, and the boy, seemingly resigned to his fate, gave in. But Jiulang had his own request. His mother was suffering from a heart condition, and the only cure was a rare medicinal pill from the imperial physician, Qi Yuang. He asked Zixiao to use his connections to obtain the medicine, which Zixiao eagerly did. But after receiving the medicine, Jiulang once again cautioned Zixiao, saying that while he might acquiesce to his desires occasionally, this could not become a regular occurrence. Despite this, the relationship continued. Jiulang would return to Zixiao every few days, often seeking medicine for his ailing mother. But as Zixiao began to waste away from an unexplained illness, the imperial physician, Qi Yuang, examined him and warned that his condition was the result of a supernatural force, specifically a ghostly pulse that indicated the presence of a spirit or demon. Jiulang then revealed the truth. He was not human, but a fox spirit. He cautioned Zixiao that their relationship was not in his best interest, but Zixiao, blind to reason, ignored the warnings. As Zixiao's health continued to deteriorate, Jiulang mourned over him, but could not stop the inevitable. He left Zixiao, and the scholar passed away soon after. What happened next was even more bizarre. A former county official who had once studied alongside He Zixiao had fallen into misfortune and died under suspicious circumstances. The night after his death, he suddenly awoke, claiming to be He Zixiao, and remembering everything about his past life. This mysterious reappearance shocked those who knew the official, but the story continued in even stranger ways. Zixiao, now seemingly reincarnated in the official's body, sought out Jiulang again. They reconnected, and their relationship resumed, with Jiulang eventually bringing a beautiful young woman, supposedly his cousin, to become Zixiao's wife. But the intrigue didn't end there. Jiulang's ability to manipulate people and situations became clear, as he orchestrated a plan to settle old scores with local officials using his charm and supernatural abilities. In the end, Jiulang's involvement with high-ranking officials led to the downfall of a provincial governor, and he amassed a fortune, using it to support Zixiao's household. However, the nature of Jiulang's influence remained ambiguous. Was he truly a benevolent spirit helping Zixiao, or was he leading him down a dangerous path? This strange and enigmatic story, with its mix of love, deception, and the supernatural, challenges our expectations of what we might find in ancient literature. It's a tale that seems both out of time and yet rooted in a tradition of fox spirit legends in Chinese folklore. We hope that you enjoyed this exploration into an unusual narrative from the Qing Dynasty, and as always, we encourage you to appreciate it as part of the fascinating tapestry of stories from the past. The Lady of Jinling. Once upon a time, there was a man named Zhao from Yishui County. One day, while traveling home after running errands in the city, he noticed a young woman in white sitting by the roadside, sobbing uncontrollably. Her beauty caught his eye, and instead of passing by, he found himself staring at her for a long while. The woman, sensing his gaze, looked up with tears in her eyes and snapped, "What are you staring at? You're a grown man. Don't you have somewhere to be?" Zhao, taken aback but still intrigued, replied, "It's just, you're crying so sadly and there's no one else around. I couldn't bring myself to just leave you here alone." The woman let out a heavy sigh. "My husband's dead. I have no home, no place to go. That's why I'm here." Zhao saw an opportunity and quickly suggested, "Well, why not find someone else? You're still young and beautiful. Surely there are good men who would care for you." The woman hesitated, then said, "But where would I even go? I'm all alone in the world. I'd be willing to become someone's concubine if only I could find a safe place to live." Zhao's heart raced. This was his chance. "I'd be honored if you came with me," he offered. To his surprise, the woman agreed without much persuasion. They began walking towards Zhao's home, but as they went, he noticed something strange. The woman moved so gracefully that it was as if her feet barely touched the ground. She almost seemed to float like a spirit through the air. Once they arrived at Zhao's home, she settled in quickly. She was hardworking, grinding grain, fetching water, and doing household chores with tireless dedication. For over 2 years, life went on smoothly, and Zhao was content. Then one day, the woman came to Zhao and said, "Thank you for your kindness. It's been almost 3 years, and I've repaid what I owe. Now it's time for me to leave." Zhao was shocked. "But you said you had no family. Where will you go?" The woman smiled faintly. "That was just a way of speaking. I do have family. My father sells medicine in Jinling. If you ever miss me, you can bring herbs to sell in Jinling. I'll help you out and maybe even give you some money to start your own trade." Zhao, desperate to keep her, offered to hire a cart or a horse for her journey. But the woman refused. Without another word, she stepped outside and began walking so fast that Zhao couldn't keep up. In the blink of an eye, she vanished down the road. For months after, Zhao was restless. He couldn't get the mysterious woman out of his mind. Eventually, he decided to take her advice. Loading up his cart with herbs, he traveled to Jinling, hoping to find her. After arriving in the city, Zhao stored his goods at an inn and wandered the streets, asking about a medicine seller. Finally, an old man in a small shop spotted him and called out, "Ah, my son-in-law, you've come!" Bewildered, Zhao followed the old man into the shop's courtyard. There, to his shock, was the woman, his woman, washing clothes like any ordinary housewife. She glanced at him but said nothing, continuing her work as though he were a stranger. Zhao, filled with anger and confusion, turned to leave, but the old man stopped him, urging him to stay for a meal. Reluctantly, Zhao sat down. The old man instructed his daughter to prepare food and wine for their guest. Throughout the entire meal, the woman never smiled, never even looked at Zhao directly. After dinner, the old man said he wanted to send Zhao off with a generous gift, but the woman intervened, her tone cold. "No, father, don't give him too much. His fortune is thin. He can't handle great wealth. Just give him a little something to help him get by. He'll be fine with a few good medicine recipes." The old man nodded and handed Zhao a handful of medical formulas, each one carefully written out. "These should be enough for you to live comfortably," he said. He also asked Zhao where his herbs were stored. When Zhao told him, the woman said, "They've already been sold. Here's the money." She handed him a small pouch of coins and turned away. Feeling a mix of shame and bitterness, Zhao left Jinling and returned to his home. Back in Yishui, he tried out the medicine recipes one by one. To his amazement, every single one worked wonders. They were miraculous cures, and soon Zhao became famous for his healing skills. Even today, people in Yishui still speak of the mysterious formulas passed down from Zhao's encounter with the strange woman. One of the most well-known remedies involves using the water from a rooftop gutter mixed with crushed garlic to treat warts, an odd but highly effective cure. But despite his success, Zhao could never shake the feeling that his encounter with the Lady of Jinling had been something far more mysterious than he had ever realized. Was she really just a woman, or had he crossed paths with something far more otherworldly? He would never know for sure. But one thing was certain: sometimes beauty comes with a price. The Binding. Young Yue had recently moved to a house near the banks of the Sea River. His study bordered an open field, and beyond the walls lay a stretch of old, forgotten graves. Every night, the wind would howl through the poplar trees in the cemetery, making the leaves sound like crashing waves in the darkness. One late night, as Yang sat alone by the dim glow of his lantern, a wave of melancholy washed over him. Suddenly, from beyond the wall, he heard a soft voice reciting poetry. The black night spins the wind back on itself. Fireflies dip low, clinging to the weeds. The voice was fragile yet haunting, and the verses were repeated several times, each repetition more sorrowful than the last. Yang listened closely. This was no ordinary voice. It was gentle and lilting, unmistakably that of a young woman. His heart filled with curiosity and dread. The next morning, he ventured outside to investigate, but found nothing. Only a purple ribbon lay tangled in the brambles by the wall. He picked it up, brought it inside, and absent-mindedly placed it on his windowsill. That night, at around midnight, the haunting poetry returned, just as before. Determined to uncover the mystery, Yang quietly dragged a stool to the wall, climbed up and peered over. The moment he looked, the voice stopped abruptly, leaving the night eerily silent. Yang was certain now it had to be a ghost, but strangely he found himself drawn to her. The next evening, well before the hour of her return, he hid near the wall, waiting. Just as midnight approached, a figure emerged from the tall grass, a young woman, graceful and pale, resting her hand on a small tree. She began reciting her mournful verse again, her head bowed in sorrow. Unable to contain himself, Yang cleared his throat softly. The woman froze, startled, and vanished into the grass as if she had never been there. He waited, hoping she would return. Eventually she did, and when she began her sad recitation again, Yang, this time, responded, "Who will know the bitter sorrow of hidden love when the cold moon hangs high and sleeves are worn thin?" The silence that followed was long and unsettling. Yang returned to his study, his heart racing with anticipation. Not long after, the door creaked open, and the ghostly woman stepped inside, bowing gracefully. "I had no idea you were a man of such refined taste," she said softly. "I fled in fear, but it seems I was mistaken." Yang, overwhelmed with excitement, invited her to sit with him. She was delicate, almost frail, as if even the weight of her clothing was too much to bear. Intrigued, he asked, "Where are you from, and why do you linger in this place?" She sighed. "I was from Longxi, brought here with my father during troubled times. I fell ill and died suddenly at the age of 17. It's been over 20 years now that I've wandered this desolate field, so lonely in the cold earth. I wrote those verses to express the sorrow I've carried. For so long, I couldn't think of how to finish them. But thanks to your verse, I finally have peace, even in death." Yang, emboldened by her words, moved closer, wanting more than just conversation. But she pulled back, her face clouded with concern. "I may seem as I once was, but I am no longer of the living. If we were to be together, it would drain your life. I can't bear to harm you." Though disappointed, Yang respected her warning. He gently caressed her, noticing her body was still as untouched as in life, but his curiosity got the better of him. He wanted to see her feet. She laughed softly, playfully calling him a crazy scholar, but humored him. When he looked, he noticed one foot was tied with a purple ribbon, the other with a colorful thread. "Why not tie both with ribbons?" he asked. She blushed. "I lost the other one last night when I was frightened by you." Yang, heart pounding, realized the ribbon he had found belonged to her. He fetched it from the windowsill and handed it to her. She tied it around her ankle with a grateful smile, the color returning briefly to her pale face. From that night onward, whenever Yang softly recited poetry, she would appear. They spent countless nights together by the lantern's glow, talking about poetry, literature, and the strange worlds of the living and the dead. She would copy verses for him, her handwriting delicate and graceful. She even taught him how to play chess and sometimes played the pipa, her music echoing through the night, mournful yet beautiful. Though their love never crossed the line into physical intimacy, the connection between them grew stronger than any marriage could. But she always reminded him, "Our love must remain a secret. I've always been afraid of being harmed by others." One day, Yang's friend, Shui, visited. Finding Yang asleep during the day, Shui couldn't help but notice the strange items in the room. Chess sets, a pipa, and poetry written in a hand far too feminine to be Yang's. Suspicious, Shui demanded to know what was going on. Yang tried to evade his questions, but Shui wasn't fooled. Finally, under pressure, Yang admitted the truth. Shui, fascinated by the ghostly beauty, insisted on meeting her. Despite his reluctance, Yang agreed. When the ghost arrived that night, Yang explained Shui's request. Furious, she scolded him, "I told you to keep our secret. Now you've gone and broken your word." Yang pleaded for her forgiveness, but she merely sighed. "Our time together is over," she whispered before vanishing into the night. Days passed, and Yang's longing for her grew unbearable. His health deteriorated, but there was no sign of the ghost. One evening, as Yang sat drinking alone, she suddenly appeared, her face streaked with tears. "I swore I wouldn't return," she said, her voice trembling, "but I need your help." Yang's heart leaped. "Of course, anything. There's a wicked ghost, a lowly servant of the underworld, who's trying to force me to become his concubine. I'm powerless against him. You're the only one who can save me." Yang was enraged. "I'll kill him if I must." But he hesitated. He knew the living had no power in the world of the dead. She smiled sadly. I'll visit you in your dreams. There's a way, but it's dangerous. That night, in his dream, she handed him a sharp blade and led him to a decrepit courtyard. Suddenly, the door was battered by rocks. He's here, she cried. Yang rushed outside to confront the intruder, a hideous figure with a red hat and a beard like bristling thorns. Yang attacked, but the ghost hurled stones at him, one striking his wrist, making him drop the knife. Just as things seemed hopeless, he saw someone approaching in the distance. It was his friend, Wang Sheng, armed with a bow. Wang shot 2 arrows, striking the ghost and finally killing him. Yang woke, his wrists swollen and aching, realizing the dream had been terrifyingly real. When Wang visited the next day, he recounted the same dream. In time, the ghostly woman returned, but their relationship could never return to what it had been. Then one night, she confessed, "If you truly love me, I can return to life. But I'll need a drop of your blood. It will weaken you for a while, but I'll live again." Yang agreed, giving her his blood. She warned him, "In 100 days, come to my grave when you see a green bird in the trees. That's when you'll know I'm ready." Yang waited, counting the days, hoping beyond hope. The 100th day came, but the rest of the tale remains lost in the shadows of the forgotten cemetery. Today, we explored the beauty of ancient Eastern literature and traditional ink paintings, with a special focus on the 33rd volume of Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio. This fascinating collection of supernatural stories continues to captivate audiences with its imaginative tales and deep cultural significance. We'd also like to take a moment to give special thanks to Little Fish for taking the time to carefully translate these ancient works, allowing more friends to appreciate their timeless beauty. For those interested in diving deeper into Eastern art and classic literature, make sure to subscribe to our channel, Eastern Brush, Western Soul. Here we celebrate the intricate world of traditional ink painting and explore the wonders of ancient texts. Join us on this journey of artistic and literary discovery.